When I read the script, I just knew it was like, this is a really entertaining, super fun musical, and how do we kind of portray that in the poster? To be honest, this was the first musical I've ever worked on. I think my connection to this actually came through Alan Doyle. I've done a bunch of design work for him over the years, and I think he dropped my name in the hat, and I'm so glad that he did. My creative process starts entirely with research. In this one, it started by reading the script and talking to everybody involved. I talked to writers, I talked to the marketing crowd that were kind of going to be the ones that, trying to sell the tickets. And I talked to Alan. He and I had a conversation about not only the music, but the whole inspiration behind the story. I basically researched every aspect of it so that ideally I know as much about the project as everybody else involved. And then I can kind of dive in and add my little piece, I kind of was inspired by a lot of vintage British comedy posters and the kind of campiness of having a lot of fun and silliness with it. And so that's why on the poster there's like a little cartoon doctor at the very bottom who's like running, but very exaggeratedly running away from these townspeople who are chasing him. So I was trying to have a bit of fun with that, make it a bit over the top, and really kind of project the fact that this is a port town that really needs some help, but will go to any extreme to make it work. The idea of having a typography that wasn't a font came into play, of having something unique. And so what I did there was I cut a bunch of blocks out of paper, and I started cutting the letters out of each of the blocks. And we basically just made these really blocky looking letters. That way everyone is kind of unique and different. So all the typography on the poster, other than the words "a musical comedy," is actually made from cutting out letters and kind of taping, gluing them together, and then just scanning them in. I really love it. It creates something that's distinctly specific to Tell Tale Harbour. No one can replicate it. The arts and craftiness of actually hand making this was really kind of a fun, exciting little challenge. Collaboration plays a huge part in a project like this. It helps in so many different ways. Working with the Confederation Center, they already have a full graphic design team and a marketing team in place. And normally when I'm doing work, I'm the only kind of creative or visual person. Here I was actually dealing direct with other graphic designers who know what they're talking about and had great ideas. And some of the ideas that ended up being the final ideas and posters were suggestions that weren't coming from me. They were coming from other collaborators on the project. Script writers and stage designers and musicians and songwriters and directors, and then say marketing people behind the scenes and all the infrastructure of a theater. The collaboration piece is so fun. Everybody's input led into the final product.
Nothing's gonna stop the sun from shining.
It's about this town, but so much of the story is also wrapped up in the Frank character. And so I wanted to represent Frank somehow as well. And that's kind of where Gully comes into it. To me, he's always been Frank, but I see he's kind of been adopted as Gully. Is a cute name that's kind of been adopted by the public and the community, which I love. The wink was Alan's idea. I had originally drawn a seagull that wasn't winking. That was the very last change right before we had locked everything in. Alan wrote back and said, "Looks awesome, but what about a wink?" And the wink actually made everything, because it does give that little nod to how sly and sneaky Frank is.
Twice or more a month, should we get to fill our...
I usually, with any project, will try and present a couple options. Interesting thing about Tell Tale Harbour is that time is running out. So one of the other ideas was centered around a clock. And I had a similar thing with the doctor running and the whole community chasing them, but it was in the face of a clock, so it almost looked like a hamster wheel, but you're not getting anywhere because you're in this clock, but at the same time the time is running out. So that was one of the concepts. Another one was going with kind of old vintage tourism posters, playing again on the sly and sneakiness of not only Frank, but the entire town. I had an idea of a person from behind, and behind their back would be their hands with their fingers crossed, kind of implying everything we're saying here may or may not totally be true. The final piece looks really simple, but obviously an awful lot of thought, not just my thought, but also all the collaborators that were involved. We all poured everything into trying to get it right so that people know that this is going to be a really good night out. The idea that we went with was actually the last one, which ended up being kind of the simplest one. A lot of the other ones had a lot more concept and a lot more density in the illustration, and this one was like, let's just let the name of the event really shine. Bring Tell Tale Harbour, make it large, put some water across the bottom so folks realize the region. And in the end, that one ended up being the one that everybody liked and gelled with. So I'm really happy with where we landed. I can't create graphics and a poster that are totally on trend to this year, because the hope is that this show and this poster and these marketing pieces are going to last for years and years and go on to be something that kind of will survive that test of time. The story is that good, so creating the artwork was something that I needed to factor that in. This has to last, and so I have to create something that doesn't look like anything else, yet at the same time looks like it comes from a place kind of is like locked in time and will last forever.